Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're logging on from in the world, and welcome to this Decarbonising Transport Week special climate perspectives interview with Mark Constable from Trojan Energy. And this is going to be all about on-street residential EV charging. Just a reminder again that Decarbonising Transport Week is sponsored by Trojan Energy and Mott MacDonald. So thanks to them. Thanks also to our supporting organisations, a big long list of them, which you can find on decarbonisingtransportweek.com. We are grateful, so grateful to all of you for your support. EV charging, I think it's fair to say, and not just from my own personal perspective, just chatting off camera with Mark earlier about my sort of efforts to get an electric vehicle in the future. I'm really mad keen on this subject and find myself idly spending hours Googling away on, charging rates and all the rest of it. So I'm really looking forward to this session with Mark. Mark is head of public affairs at Trojan Energy, who I think it's fair to say are somewhat of a pioneer, a trailblazer, if you like, in the realm of on-street residential EV charging. I think it's fair to say as well that Mark could be described as an early adopter. He drove his first EV in 2008 and was immediately struck by the potential of this technology, of this medium of transport. And I think it's fair to say ever since that date, he's been involved in the sector in quite a large way. He's also sat on a number of steering advisory groups, as well as having his role as his day job role as head of public affairs at Trojan Energy. He currently chairs Recharge UK at the Renewable Energy Association. And I think it's fair to say that, if you need to know the ins and outs of this issue, then hopefully Mark, over the next 30 minutes, will show that he certainly knows his stuff. So welcome to you, Mark, and thanks for doing this Climate Perspectives interview with us here today. What got you involved in the EV charging arena, and why are you so passionate about it?
So, first of all, thank you very much for that fulsome welcome, Andy. There's not much left for me to talk about in terms of my own experience. I mean, that EV that I drove in 2008, it was a prototype Toyota Prius. It had a 4-mile range, and I was working at EDF at the time, and they were just looking for volunteers to kind of take it for a week. And my kind of name came up. I thought, well, that's quite interesting. And I lived so close to the office that I lived about less than a mile from the office. And before I got home, I realized that, oh wow, this is going to be huge if car manufacturers decide to go down the kind of the electric mobility route. And so from that point on, I was I wanted to maneuver my career into the space. It had come less than a year after my son had been born. He's doing his A-levels now, so that's how long I've been involved in the sector. It's just looking at living in and around London, in southeast London, air quality, carbon emissions. It was all very, very kind of front and center, and I immediately saw the potential to effectively solve a lot of those problems, not necessarily immediately, but over time with a switch to electric vehicles, not just cars, but buses and trucks and all of those good things as well.
How much progress, in your view, are we making in the area of on-street residential charging? I mean, I look around where I live currently, and there aren't a lot of electrical chargers. Equally, I might go to London, and I'm not having a north-south divide dig here in any way, shape, or form, but I might go to certain areas of London. I was driving through Hackney about 2 months ago, and there was chargers all over the place. How much progress are we making?
So I think that in the first kind of 10 years of this market, the progress was relatively patchy, not just in terms of deployment, but also in terms of the number of stakeholders who were getting their head around the kind of the electric mobility question. I say this a lot, and it's supposed to be a compliment, but the local authorities that are the furthest ahead in terms of their kind of thinking, and the ones who've developed a strategy some time ago, ago tended to be the ones that had an electric vehicle kind of enthusiast at the right point, at the right level within their organisation to be able to take this forward. The government over the last certainly since the plug-in car grant in September 2011 has put an awful lot of support into the sector. We mustn't forget that in the current political climate, and the on-street public charging arena has been relatively well supported. There was the Go Ultra Low City scheme, there's been the on-street residential charging scheme, and now there's Levi. I guess it's probably fair to say that the amount of money being pushed out by Levi, which is the local...
Just explain, Levi. Sorry, I've got my jargon detector
that's
on,
good.
so
I
know what it is, but just...
Yeah, so Levi is the local electric vehicle infrastructure scheme. It's I think it's £381 million of funding that's been allocated by government. I think about between 40 and 50 of that is to pay for expertise in local authorities, and the remainder is for capital expenditure. And it's basically been allocated to every local authority in the country. And we're going through that process right now. So the Levi, the first tranche, the first 62 applications are currently being processed and pushed through now. Some of those announcements have been made. Some of those announcements are still to come. But it's for the first time, it's effectively incumbent on every local authority to have a response to Levi, as opposed to all the previous schemes where local authorities could choose whether to effectively apply for funding or not. So one of the big benefits of Levi is it gets everybody involved in the game. The flip side is it's such a big scheme and it's such a lot of work that it's created a little bit of a hiatus in kind of on-street deployment over the last 12 months, it's fair to say. But once those Levi schemes start to be approved, and once we start seeing those procurements come out, the pace of deployment is going to accelerate like nothing we've ever seen.
Right, and just to say a couple of things before we continue. If people in the audience have got any questions for Mark, then please post them in the questions box, and we'll get to those in due course. Also, you can take advantage of a handout. If you look at the GoToWebinar sort of dialog box that will be on your screen, depending on what kind of software you're using or what kind of computer you're using, there's a handout box, and you can get further information on Trojan Energy from that. Just coming back to making the progress that we need to make in the EV charging arena, what do you see as the barriers to progress currently, Mark, in this area?
Okay, so there's kind of two areas of kind of two kind of themes, if you like. One, it's a cultural challenge. I've always said that the switch to e-mobility is a much bigger cultural challenge than it is a technical one, and that's a culture change within all stakeholders, not just the local authorities involved in kind of delivering on-street schemes, but also drivers, legislators. The challenge is that a lot of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in particular has been, and this is the second theme, has been delivered under a legislative and regulatory framework that didn't take account of the need to deploy electric vehicle infrastructure when it was written. Some of the work that I've done as part of my work with the REA and some of the work with government, we've written a number of reports. Other trade bodies have also written reports, and some of the elements that are currently being consulted upon are, square in the barriers to delivering more charging infrastructure. The number of street works permits and Section 50 and the cost and timescale, that's under consultation at the moment to run until early April. There's a planning permission consultation out as well, and there's also likely to be an incentive for cross-pavement solutions of the type that Trojan also have in our product set, where you can effectively tie a charging space in public back to your home energy supply. So there are a number of barriers, and like I say, the Levi scheme has been quite instrumental in the cultural side, because for the first time it provides training and expertise. The Levi support body Senex have just released a training scheme for local authority officers to understand about the category. And make no mistake, this is an entirely new category of expertise. You know, some of the local authorities that might have given this in the past to kind of an overworked, you know, sort of parking and street furniture team may have found that it's been quite difficult to, you know, build expertise because of all the other resource pressures that they're under. And so the need to kind of create this as an entirely new local category within local authority strategies is key. But there's, you know, things are moving, you know, kind of in the right direction. You know, there's a lot of money, there's an awful lot of people working on this now. And as I said, within the next year or so, we should see that rollout really start to accelerate.
Yeah, because it seems to me that given the government imperative, and indeed, um, you know, the imperative, you know, because of all the net zero targets, this seems to me to be an area that local authorities in particular should be looking to speed up, because most of us live in a house, and that house, you know, needs access to, you know, charging infrastructure. I mean, is it all about cost, or is planning an issue too in this field?
So I think the planning, the challenges in planning stem from you know, an unfamiliarity. So there have been a lot of planning consultations done in the past. Permitted development rights are now exist for local authorities delivering infrastructure themselves, and there is, but you know, organisations such as Trojan and others delivering, you know, charging on the public highway are still subject to, you know, street works permits and perhaps some other licenses which were never thought to be applicable to this kind of space. But you know, the Highways Act is not that specific in what sort of circumstances, you know, a lot of these things apply. So everyone's been kind of working their way through a product set which is open to interpretation. Those local authorities that are a bit more risk averse have taken a little bit more of a risk averse view on the legislation and have kind of added more requirements, with the inevitable or outcome that infrastructure delivery is slower. The flip side is also true. Some local authorities have taken a really pragmatic approach to, you know, some of that regulation and legislation, and those areas have had, you know, a much more rapid uptake. There is one definite area which is still a challenge, and it's where the highways and planning sits in two separate authorities. So when you talk about, you know, the massive amount of uptake in London, London is entirely unitary authorities, and it's the metropolitan unitary authorities who are responsible for both the highways and planning, who have found it much easier to roll out infrastructure than, say, the county local authorities, who are tier 1 highways authorities, but planning resides with the local district council, many of whom may not have even encountered an electric vehicle you know, before, and it's entirely new to them. So the kind of the urban rural split isn't just because it's urban and rural, it's about the different makeup in the kind of the local regimes and actually being able to get this infrastructure deployed.
Yeah, I can understand how that being an issue, because although I live in a reasonably urban area, we're also quite rural as well, and that interface between urban and rural, district and unitary councils, frankly, we could run a week of events just based on why that's a problem in life, never mind for electric vehicle charging. But I can understand how it would be an issue. Just a quick practical question. Can anyone have a home charger? And what about people who live in terrace houses? Now, I know you've got a solution for that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so I still hear it, you know, regularly at events. You know, even now, you know, 40% of the country can't have a home charger. 10 million cars apart can't have a home charger. I've yet to see a house or a dwelling anywhere in the UK that technically couldn't have a home charger. The only reason people believe they can't have a home charger is what other people are saying. And that's part of the cultural shift that probably needs to occur in order to, ultimately solve the home charging challenge for, for those millions and millions of people. We've put polling in the field in conjunction with Ipsos, a well-known polling company, that tells us, depending on where you are in the country, up to half of the people who own a car and live in a place without a driveway, half of them are waiting until they can charge at home before they get an EV. Now that's a huge number of adoption. That's between 3 and 5 million cars waiting for home charging in a place where even a lot of people in the industry say you can't have one. There are lots and lots of solutions to that. The cross pavement category, Trojan has a solution. There are others. You might have seen some of the gullies. Anyone who watched Dragon's Den the other week might have seen a gully solution on there. And it's a growing category and is largely the answer for those sorts of terraced areas. Some of the early technology, such as lamppost charging, very, very quick, very, very cheap to kind of roll out. There is a question as to whether capacity and number of sockets, i.e. amount of power available and number of sockets, can actually fulfill an entire neighborhood's requirements. And so there are other solutions in the arsenal, but we need all of it. I've worked in EV charging for well over a decade. I've worked in all segments: private, rural, rapid, depot, on street, and we just need all of it.
How do we get local authorities then to step up to the plate? Because obviously they're going to have to be involved in some of this, particularly when we look at it at scale, to get the infrastructure we need.
So they are stepping up. Like as I've said, the Levi scheme has been probably the largest single shove in the direction of kind of every local authority needing to have considered this question since the market has opened. We're not quite there in terms of a mandate, i.e. all local authorities must deliver charging. I'm an advocate for there to be some sort of mandate, but I also recognise that local authorities are not exactly the least stressful organisations in the country to work for, especially over the 10 years, and lots of prioritisation has to happen, in and around their activities. But if the climate emergency has been declared and air quality is in any kind of a challenge, then local authorities will be stepping up to the plate. The Levi scheme gives them lots and lots of help, assistance, expertise at the end of the process to be able to do that. And it's now just a case of letting that process kind of play through, and we'll see where we are at the end of the Levi scheme, when all of that funding has been allocated and those programs are in progress.
The other side of obviously EV adoption is obviously the vehicles themselves. Is Trojan Energy partnering with any vehicle manufacturers at all in order to sort of have a joined up approach as far as that's concerned? Because you do see some energy companies partnering with manufacturers.
Yeah, and so we've spoken with a number of manufacturers. They're interested in our technology and the fact that we can provide chargers to possibly at the point of sale. We're also talking with vehicle manufacturers around the bidirectional challenge. Trojan Energy is absolutely committed to building a solution that enables grid flexibility and is bidirectional. But being an AC provider, we're kind of waiting for the vehicles to catch up. So we have a lot of conversations with OEMs. Clearly, I can't name any in terms of who those players are, about where that AC kind of vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, vehicle to load kind of conversation might go. But the car manufacturers are absolutely stepping up to the plate in general terms. I mean, I remember when I first started in the EV world, some of the initial EVs were really controversial inside their own companies. I'm thinking of vehicles like the Nissan Leaf, which caused quite a bit of discussion internal to Nissan at the time. We're not in that place anymore. All the manufacturers understand that electrification and adoption of e-mobility is the biggest game in town, and the zero emission vehicle mandate that's now been mandated for the UK which is unchanged broadly as a result of the recent announcements, pushes them in that direction. The only risk that we've had is the investment uncertainty created by the shift from 2030 to the 2035, and maybe in a certain version of the future that might go back to 2030 in a year or so's time.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. We interviewed the Shadow Roads Minister earlier on, and Labour are committed to returning that to the 2030 date. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. You mentioned, Mark, that the local EV infrastructure fund, Levy, that doesn't continue indefinitely, though, does it? Can you just explain a little bit about that and what the on-street AC market might look like when that incentive's gone?
Mm-hmm. So Levi is effectively a 2-year kind of program. There's what's called Tranche 1, which is 62 kind of local authority conglomerations. That's not 62 local authorities, that's 62 applications with a number of local authorities in each, and that's this financial year. Tranche 2 is the remaining local authorities, and that's next financial year. The schemes are front loaded a little bit in terms of getting that £340 million out of the door. I think it's about 2/3 to 3/4 in year one. Don't quote me, but it's kind of around that. It's not backloaded. It's not kind of pushing something down the kicking the can down the road. But you're right. After 2 years on the current timescales, that money will have been allocated. Councils have a little while to spend it, but once we get into effectively the post incentive world, and there's currently no incentives in the on-street space subsequent to Levi, we're then in the space of making sure that everyone's got their technology as cheap as it can be. The cost down has occurred. Some of the policy costs have been taken out in order to be able to really get after it. I mean, if I was going to bang Trojan's drum a little bit, we're one of the few vertically integrated EV charging companies in that we manufacture, install, own and operate a lot of our infrastructure, and we've built our own charge point management system as well, although it can interface with others. So we're undertaking a big program to get our cost down, reduce the cost of the hardware. My job in public affairs is to try and persuade stakeholders to relax some of the policy costs with my various hats on, and at that point we need to get to the point where the infrastructure can be delivered without incentives. There's no way we get to 2030 without the last 5 years being largely incentive free, because that's the only way that we'll be able to build volume. The UK can't keep spending kind of public money on this. So we've got a plan. I'm sure a lot of our competitors and industry colleagues have got a plan as well. I mean, the good news is there are lots and lots of organisations in this space, all of whom are working really hard to get to that same goal, which is the incentive-free environment in a year or two.
So your solutions then, really do fit in well with whatever kind of charging sort of challenge that where customers have. I mean, do you do much on the commercial side as well?
So we do have our hub product, which is the DNO connected kind of system with up to 15, 22 kilowatt charge points coming off of one connection. That is commercially available. We're having conversations with a number of parties at the moment who like the low profile nature of our charging for their company car park. We've also got interest from heritage style organisations who want to minimise the visual impact of charging, and so we're concentrating very much on local authorities at the moment whilst we ramp up production in our own factory in Aberdeen. But yes, we've got lots and lots of kind of market segments in order to be able to exploit our technology, and we've got worldwide patents on all of our technology as well. And there will be shortly there will be possibly some international announcements coming as well.
Again, just to encourage people to download that Trojan Energy brochure that's available in the handouts. And I mean, I'm not just saying this because Mark's here. The kit does look really good. And I was actually surprised that you mentioned there some of those heritage organisations. I can see why they would be attracted to that, because it is very low profile and very sort of slick. Just another question for you as well. I mean, it seems to me that again, you started off this interview talking about debunking some of the misconceptions that even exist within the industry that have probably dulled consumers' enthusiasm for making the change because of just the wrong information that's out there. How can we give drivers the confidence and the convenience that they need to go electric? How do we get that out there so that people think, yeah, it's a no-brainer, not, oh, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that? How do we do that?
So, I mean, I can't go anywhere near this issue without talking about the relentless wave of anti-EV media stories that are totally inaccurate and verging on flat-out falsehoods, and indeed cross that line in a number of cases. Some media outlets are running anti-EV stories every single day. I know that some of the people that I've worked with in the industry, people like Quentin Wilson, are really on top of this particular issue. The Fully Charged organisation with Stop Burning Stuff as well, with Robert Llewellyn and those guys are very focused on just this wave of anti EV sentiment. Conspiracy theories right up there with the 15-minute with right up there with the 15-minute city. I mean, imagine the oppression of being able to walk to stuff that you need rather than having to get in your car and drive. It's extraordinary how these things can get twisted into some kind of level of control. So there is, I'm pleased to say that the House of Lords recognised it in their recent review of the UK EV market, and certainly lots and lots of parliamentarians, I'm pleased to say Bill is one of them, is very cognizant of this fact. And so that is effectively, if you're keen to do any kind of research on the topic at all, you'll cut through it really quickly. The challenge is with any mass market technological adoption, you can't rely on all 35 million drivers being EV experts before they pull the trigger on a buying decision. And so it is very worrying that this turn of events has taken place. Some outlets are now on like their 250th consecutive day of negative stories. The flip side, if I was to take a positive from it, it shows that we're just about to win, because people wouldn't be putting this much effort into it otherwise. It's that famous quote: first they ignore you, then they dismiss you, then they fight you, then you win. And we're really in that stage now. The EV adoption shows no sign of stopping. The fact there's a really strong used market now. On the same day you can have a negative story that EV prices are dropping, but surely if EV prices are dropping, that's good for consumers. consumers, and some of those new second-hand sales will be cannibalizing some new sales. Now there's an inevitable market correction that takes place in any asset that's got more than one ownership
Well, it
cycle.
shows the growing maturity of that market, doesn't it? I think.
Absolutely. That's what happens. You know, traditionally in the UK, 4 out of every 5 vehicle purchases are second-hand. In the EV market for the last 10 years, it's been more like 9 out of every 10 have been brand new. And so, you know, we got to get to that point where, you know, EVs become affordable. Battery prices are coming down. You know, cost to build will be parity very, very shortly. And, you know, with the ZEV mandate, there's good incentives on, you know, organisations to be able to sell those vehicles. And so, you know, I've always been kind of really, really confident. If when I started 10 years ago, I'd have never have thought we would have been where we are now at this point. Back then, I thought it was a 2050 horizon. I thought it was effectively a 40-year program to get to, you know, kind of mass adoption. I think we'll probably be in mass adoption probably a decade sooner than that now.
Just another question. I mean, I think I know what your answer to this is going to be. How reliable are on-street chargers? You know, is there any issue, you know, with them, you know, falling out of, you know, kind of usage, or, you know, is the technology pretty much spot on?
So electrically, chargers are pretty reliable. The challenge is from damage, vandalism, and losing a comms connection, which tends to be relatively common as well, where, you know, chargers kind of go wrong. I think in the future, I think charging hubs is likely to be the way to go, where you have lots and lots of sockets, you know, within a very, very kind of small kind of local area. The days of kind of one post at the end of the street, I'm sure some areas are still you know, going down that route, but, you know, in terms of if you've got a street with, you know, a long suburban street with 50 cars in it, you know, one post is not going to kind of do the job. Reliability is definitely a challenge within you know, the category generally, as is every kind of electric component that's on the street. You know, we see, you know, the odd street light being out. You know, we see, you know, car park ticket machines not having power or having the screens smashed, or those sorts of things. And it's incumbent on those of us who, you know, design the infrastructure to make it as reliable as possible, as robust as possible. I mean, our charge points are, you can drive a truck over them, and if one of them does go wrong, you can swap it out in 10 minutes without actually closing the road, because our charge point is a cartridge based system. So we do no maintenance on the highway at all. We swap out the charge point, shove it in the back of the van, or indeed on the back of a rucksack, and someone takes it to the workshop either in their van or on the tube. So you know, it's definitely a growing concern. The government have recognised that in the PCPR, which is the Public Charge Point Regulations. Reliability measures are currently applying to DC rapid charging 50 kilowatts and above. Inevitably, that's going to happen in the lower powered, you know, on-street AC market as well, and rightly so. We just need to make sure that those methods and those performance regimes accurately reflect the kind of the uncontrolled public environment that those chargers are in, as opposed to the more controlled private environments that some of the current legislated reliability charges are in.
And just finishing off with a final, hopefully striking an optimistic note, because we should be optimistic about this stuff. At the end of the day, this is contributing to
Definitely.
not just decarbonisation, but the saving of our planet. So why should we be optimistic about the future? And what would be your message to those people and organisations who are looking at this area thinking, oh, I'm just not sure whether it's for me or not. What do I need to do?
So, I mean, there are lots and lots of organisations out there. There's lots and lots of kind of media channels. If you're coming at it from a completely, you know, with a completely sort of no knowledge at all of the sector, which most people will be doing, as adoption grows. Go and look at some of the media channels. Go and look at some of the information sources that are provided by. There's lots and lots of people who are professional YouTubers, amateur YouTubers. There's lots and lots of experts who've got their own channels. People are experts in batteries. People are experts in vehicle maintenance. People are experts in the finance. There are lots and lots of organisations now who are helping buyers both in the private space and in the lease space to understand the whole kind of total cost of ownership and the charging challenge. The direction of travel is clear. I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit in that when I started in EVs, hydrogen looked like it might take hold in the light vehicle sector. I'd say that hydrogen is exactly the same place now than it was in 2012, whereas the EV sector has moved along. Hydrogen is being looked at in terms of those larger vehicles, but in terms of the most of the vehicles in the country, i.e. cars and light vans, electric mobility is the only it's the only game in town, and is likely to be the only game in town at least for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So you can buy with confidence that the technology is not going to become obsolete, also that it's not going to become supported in the future. The support is there. It's all of us infrastructure providers need to get to volume in order to be able to justify all the investment that we've had. So there's lots and lots of people all pulling in the same direction to make electric light mobility an absolute lock-in.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. We've run out of time. We've run over time, but hopefully people will agree that it was well worth continuing on the conversation. Thanks to you for joining us today. Also, thanks to you for your wider role in the industry of being a real, sort of advocate for not just this technology, but the whole issue of decarbonisation itself. A reminder as well that for people that they can find out more by visiting the Trojan Energy website, which I have to say is a really user-friendly website, and I think in the way that you have kind of just explained things really clearly, your website does that well as well from an online perspective. So thanks very much indeed for that, and thanks for everyone for joining us as well for this session as part of Decarbonising Transport Week. Thanks once again to our sponsors, Trojan Energy, Mark's organisation, and also Mott MacDonald. And you can find out more on decarbonisingtransportweek.com. Join us again tomorrow for the final day of the week, when we'll be looking at the areas of aviation and also maritime. So do please join us for that. But for now, thanks again very much indeed to Mark and to Trojan Energy, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Andy. Have a good one.